interwebs, welcome to Let's Review. Today we are taking a look at the Nzxt Kraken X52. I have been wanting to look at this water cooler for a very long time. However, the opening problem that I'm going to point out with it is it's very expensive. These things cost about 140 quid. Now, by comparison, the Corsair H100i, which is my kind of standard issue water cooler, is about 100 to 120 pounds. You know, it's a good sort of 30 to 40 pounds cheaper at any given time. And when you think about it, you know, that's 50%. You know, there's a lot of money, a lot of extra money for this thing, which is why I've not been able to look at it yet. But I have been really wanting to look at it because it's super shiny. So let's unbox this thing and see what we've got in there. Alright, so we've got some paperwork, some instructions. We've got a couple of fans. Now these are proper 4-pin fans, standard issue. Now these are the Nzxt Air fans, fluid dynamic bearings, so really nice bearings in those. These feel really nice quality. They've got rubber mounts around here. This is nice. I mean, the Corsair comes with nice fans, but not as nice as this. So once again, we're starting to see where your money is going. These are not top end fans. They're not RGB or anything like that, but for bog standard black plastic fans, they are very nice. They've got really nice labels on the back as well. So, you know, if you've got the labels on show, they're gonna look tasty. Let's put that back in the sleeve for a moment and take a look at what else is in the box. So we've got a wiring harness here, which is detachable. That's a nice touch. I like the way that the wiring harness is detachable from the unit itself. That makes fitting a little bit easier. 2 separate cables. Yeah, we've got a USB header cable there. Not quite as nice as the Corsair one. Doesn't have the 90-degree connector on it, which is a shame. Other than that, it's standard issue. It's not too difficult to hide these out of the way, so I'm not heartbroken about that. And then, let me see, we've got the wiring harness here, flat connector that goes to a serial ATA power connector to run the whole thing, which is nice. It's not trying to power it all off of a motherboard fan header. And we've got a 4 times 4 pin fan headers on this. So you can run up to 4 fans on this fella, which is a nice touch. So if you want, you can run your case fans off of this same wiring harness, which is kind of nice. But we'll get more into that a bit later. The build that we're doing, we will have CAM software and a CAM fan controller available to us, so we'll see if that's any good or not. Right, backplate, that's the same as the Corsair one, so whatever, yeah, standard issue stuff. And a lot of fairly unsorted looking fittings there, but we've got enough for AMD stuff and Intel, so whatever you want to fit. And we've got a hold down plate for Intel there. Oh no, sorry, that's labeled AMD. We've got the hold down plate for AMD, and yeah, that's right, we've got the square one for Intel already pre-fitted. So let's take a look at the unit itself. Radiator is standard issue. Again, it's similar kind of quality to the Corsair one, really. The side isn't quite as nice, doesn't have the same trim down it. This is just sort of a stamped metal trim. But you've got the Nzxt bang down the side there, so looks nice. Feels reasonable quality. The hoses are nice. These hoses are a little bit thinner than the old Corsair ones, which I am not. You know, people who watch my channel for a long time will know that I'm not a big fan of the Corsair ones. I think they're too big and too heavy. So I like the way that this is thinner. Corsair's new water coolers, their Pro ones, theoretically should also have thinner cables, but I haven't had a chance to take a look at those yet. I do think that on a design perspective, this one is nicer than Corsair's new one, and the reason for that is mainly this pump head. It looks fairly innocuous from here, and just putting it on display here, it looks a bit like sort of, well, that looks, it's a block, and it's a lot deeper than I thought it would be. But when we power this thing up, you're going to see why I've been desperate to look at this thing. So we're going to check all that out in a minute. Can we see the Nzxt logo behind there? Very faintly. Look at that shiny. That's very shiny. Mirror finish. I love it. When we turn this on, this thing is going to light up and it's going to look amazing. So these hose points, they do swivel as well, which is also nice. Again, my other beef with the Corsair H100i, the hose points, they can twist, but they don't swivel like this. So that's nice. The rest of it, bit of a sort of scratchy plastic feel, but again, same as the Corsair. So yeah, it's fairly unassuming in its current state. The bottom looks nice. Got a sort of a circular finish on that, which is fine. Some pre-applied thermal paste. Standard fare. So let's get this thing fitted, and we're going to fire it up and see how it performs and how it looks, which is the bit that I want to know about. Okay, so let's have a quick wander around the Nzxt cam software. Now, I'll very briefly introduce this because I've done more detailed view of this in the H200i video, which is the case we're on here. That's also coming out at a similar time to this one. So have a look for there for more introductions on cam. However, let's just jump straight into the fan profiles for the Kraken. So let's do some adjustment here. So we've got a couple of controls in this. As you can see, by default, it gives us some really nice information here on fan speed, fan RPM, liquid temperature, and pump RPM, which is a really nice touch, especially the liquid temperature. I like that because the liquid temperature tells us the level of heat soak that we've got here. Because if your liquid is ice cold, then your CPU your fans don't need to ramp up. The fans don't need to ramp up until the liquid warms up, which is a very interesting thing. So by default, the profiles actually track liquid temperature rather than CPU, which is kind of cool. They have a silent profile set up out of the box, which bottoms out at 25%, so no passive mode, which is kind of annoying. I really wish that these water coolers would let you set passive fans, because at idle, your fans don't need to be running, they really don't. Or at the very least, drop to say, 20% or something where they're basically off, but, such is life. So the silent profile, because it goes down to 20%, it is 25%, it is reasonably silent, and it doesn't pick up until, realistically, we're not picking up until 40 degrees and up, which is where your CPU is starting to warm up. If I owned this, I would probably set a custom profile and just push that curve to the right a little bit, so it didn't ramp up until we were hitting like the 50s or so. But this is fine. You're not going to be too bothered about that day to day. We can also adjust the pump profile, which is quite an interesting one. Now, on my Corsair H100i, I defy anyone who can hear the pump running in that thing. However, on the Kraken, when I set it to the performance mode, I can actually hear an audible whine coming from it where the pump ramped up in speed. It is worth setting the silent profile on the pump to keep that silent operation going, and that is worth having there. Likewise, you could probably set a custom profile to bring it down a bit further, but really I wouldn't bother bringing it down too much, because lowering your pump speed will directly impact your CPU temperatures. Although again, if your liquid is staying cool, you could bring the pump speed down quite happily. But such is. You've got good customization here though, which is what's important, and good information. So let's move on to the bit that you really want to see, which is the lights. So if we switch to the lighting profile here, we've got a switch here saying all channels, which tie the logo and the ring lights together. So we're going to keep those deselected so we can have independent illumination on them. So firstly, I can just flat switch those off. We can switch that on and off, and we can switch the ring off as well. So you can adjust that to be whatever you want. If we click on the logo, we can then go ahead and customize this. So we can do all the usual RGB effects. So we've got breathing. Let's apply a breathing effect, and we'll get a fade in. Then we've got the fade, so you can cycle through colors. So you can do a color cycle of 2 different colors, or you can put it on your obligatory RGB spectrum. We've also got the pulse, which has a slight ramp to it, which is nice. So as you can see, it actually pulses, whereas most of the time a pulse profile is more of a flash, and flashing just looks horrifying. So you get a bit of a sort of a heartbeat with that. And then you've got, your spectrum wave, where you can do your discotheque RGB lighting, which I make no secret of not being a fan of. So we're going to set that back to our fixed white color. Then in addition to that, under these tabs here, you can also tie this up to CPU temperature, FPS and stuff like that. So a really neat feature of this that I love is you could set your Nzxt logo to be the CPU temperature while still having the outer ring doing a light show. So that's kind of cool, is that you can get the function out of it and the form, which is super cool. If I owned one of these, I would probably set like a white default that would fade to red as it heats up or something like that, which is kind of a cool idea. Then we've also got other custom things where you can layer up a couple of effects, or you can tie it to audio and stuff like that. So cool presets there. So let's head out of there. Now the ring LED is even more functional. We can do all of the previous effects plus more. So we've got spectrum wave here. That's going to give us a full RGB ring around the outside. And you can also do the marquee, which is what we just had it on there, where we've just got the spinning marquee or a cover marquee where it fills and empties, which is a lovely little effect. We've got it on 2 similar colors here, just so it's got a little bit of adjustment. Let me just change that to, let's just change that to black to white, and then you'll see the effect. So we fill purple, we fill white, we fill purple again. So the cover marquee's got some cool effects in it, and it has all the other stuff as well. What about Tai Chi? What's Tai Chi? Okay, so the Tai Chi kind of has this sort of this yin-yang thing where you kind of have two competing colors, which is also a really nice effect if you want to stack 2 colors. Like you could stick in a red and an orange there to create a fiery effect in there. So you can do some nice effects with that. Then Watercooler. What's Watercooler doing? Well, that's kind of fun. So, we've got a red at the bottom and a blue at the top in this kind of cycling effect. So that's, we've got some really nice presets in here that you can play around with. And load as well. I'm not sure what's load doing. So that is probably going to give us a bit of a light show based on the load of the CPU, would be my guess. But I invite you to go and explore them. You can do cool stuff with them, is what I'm saying. So we're going to head back to our red marquee, which we've dialed in to match the rest of the board. Now, the other thing that you can do with this is if you pop into custom here, we can actually set the LED colors up on a per LED basis. So notice how we've split the ring up now. So we can actually set a individual color on each ring. So we can go bang, and we can go that one and dial in a blue, and then we can put the rest to black. And as you can see here, I'm just building up a custom colored ring, so you can put in a very unique kind of effect on it. And I believe you can probably, so we've got that on breathing, or you can have it on fixed. So you can do lots of cool stuff. And we've got the intervals where you can make it fast or slow and so on. So the lighting on this is super advanced. And again, that's what you're paying for here, because we have to remind you that this cooler does cost about £30 more than the Corsair H100i. Corsair have, of course, just recently released their Hydro Pro series, which is their answer to this one. However, although it's got lots of fancy RGB on it, it doesn't have that glorious spinning ring. And personally, if you want something that looks flashy, this is what you want. So yeah, that's what you're paying for at the end of the day. If you're not interested in how it looks, buy the Corsair. If you want something that looks spectacular, buy the Nzxt. So that more or less brings up my summary on this. So in terms of cooling ability, yeah, it cools basically. It cools as well as the Corsair one does. It's a 240mm radiator, which is more than adequate for an i5 or an i7. You don't need a 280mm rad. This is for bonkers people with crazy CPUs and crazy overclocks. For an average standard computer, the 240 is absolutely fine. It's silent at idle and it's silent at load. If you hear your fans spinning up on this thing, then you've messed up your fan profiles, basically. And in terms of the looks, it's drop dead gorgeous, let's face it. And yeah, for looks, I would take the Nzxt. If looks were not important, I'd buy the Corsair because it's 30 or 40 quid cheaper, which is about 50%. So yeah. Otherwise, as a product, I think it's fantastic. I'd highly recommend it. I would like them to sort out that USB cable. Other than that, no major grievances. I would definitely recommend it to someone who's looking at this going, I really want it. So, thank you very much for watching, everyone. I will see you next time. Goodbye for now.